Awesome. Hello, everybody. I am super excited. We've had 2 days, right? This is today's the second day of the From Nothing to Anything conference, a virtual conference that celebrates all things unschooling and self-directed learning. So I am super excited for Karima, the founder of the Genius School, and putting together such an awesome virtual conference for people who have similar thoughts and opinions and mindsets around what learning and education can be. And for folks who are interested in getting a sneak peek, right? And maybe they're not quite there yet, but they're interested in learning about it and may journey into it in the future. So I have with me the lovely Miss Leslie. And tell me your last name one more time, Leslie.
It's Joan Sessler.
Jones Sessler.
Yes.
And Leslie and I have met each other in the past on Clubhouse through some homeschooling and unschooling rooms on that audio app. And so I'm excited to have her with me and to be with her in partnership in leading this room called Unschooling Little Ones. Okay. So we're going to be talking about unschooling and self-directed learning with our little ones. And just to frame our conversation today, it's going to be a little bit less of a speech and more of a conversation between Leslie because we are very unique in the fact that we are both moms um, who are on a self-directed learning journey, but we are also both former school leaders. We're still both educators, just in a
Yeah.
different realm right now. But we were both former school leaders, and so we bring a really unique perspective to the conversation of unschooling. And so we're going to be talking a little bit about our own experiences. We're going to talk a little bit about play, about narration and observation, and those concepts and how they play a role in unschooling. So let's get it started. You know what? I apologize. Give me 1 second. Let me turn off my notifications. So that I don't get that popping up again. All right. So we are going to start just giving a little bit of background, Leslie, on sort of your where you're at, your family, who's in your family, your professional experience, and then we'll dive into the first question. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay. Well, hi, Cody. I'm Leslie Joan Sessler, and I am a progressive educator. I always love to say progressive educator because there's a big difference, as you know, from traditional education. And I love everything hands-on learning, everything experiential learning. I've been an educator for over 3 decades, serving as a teacher, literacy coach, principal, assistant superintendent, and college instructor. And now I am a homeschool mom to Sammy, who is 6 years old. We use the unschooling, self-directed education approach. We've been at this for 2 years, a little over 2 years now. I'm married to Randy. We live in the Midwest in Indiana. I'm originally from New York and he's from Florida. And I'm also a blogger at Watch Monkey Mama, where I blog about education, homeschool, motherhood, lifestyle in general. So I'm here for everything play-based learning, unschooling, self-directed education, and more. So I think that's it. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Leslie, for sharing that. And we'll dive a
Did you
little
hear
bit more.
that? Am I too low or that's good?
No, that's perfect. I'm
Okay.
actually trying to figure out my screen is doing
Take my
something.
coffee here. I can keep talking if you want.
Yes, please keep talking for a minute while I get my screen together.
Sure. Okay. So let's see. I'm also known now as I'm sure you are, principal turned unschooler. And I found out about unschooling pretty much like a lot of people did when COVID hit, and we suddenly had to bring our children inside, many of us. And so Sammy was attending a 3 day preschool, and I always kind of thought that he would go to a progressive school, but I just did not find one that had the philosophy that I believed in. Also, diversity means so much to me. Having been a Black teacher and a Black principal, I really had an issue knowing that in our local school system and school, he probably would not have a Black teacher until maybe high school, and probably not ever a Black administrator. So I started looking for a progressive model. of homeschooling and did the research and came across unschooling and just started reading about John Holt, Dr. Peter Gray, met so many people through podcast and YouTube and Facebook, joined Clubhouse, met my tribe, and now I'm here. So that's pretty much our journey.
That's awesome. Yeah, we have very similar journeys in the sense that we were both really deep in, the traditional school system and knew how it functioned and how it worked. Knew the strengths of it, but knew a lot of the weaknesses, right? And wanted something different and better, quite frankly, for our own children. And so I too did, I started off homeschooling, like definitely homeschooling. I was one of those ones that, in the first couple of weeks, it was basically school at home, with, worksheets, workbooks, very clear schedule of what needed to get done. And that was just a product of me needing to have something that was consistent for myself, I think, starting off. And then I quickly realized that, there were components of that weren't working in a regular school. And so they weren't going to be working at home either. And so then that's when I started also, diving into what else could this look like and feel like? I had already had a strong background in project-based learning, so I knew I wanted to shift our homeschooling experience into that realm. And then when I did shift it into the PBL project-based learning realm, then that's when I realized, okay, my son actually really doesn't need any of this other structural things that I was putting into place. He can really direct himself as long as I'm, helping to provide the resources and the means to gather the information and the materials and transportation to get to the places that he needed to get to and to get to those resources. So we then transitioned from homeschool to PBL to more of a self-directed unschooling approach where he, it really takes the reins of his learning. So I'm excited about that. Allison, I see you're in the house. Welcome into the room. Feel free to join in the conversation, raise your hand, ask a question in the chat whenever you so feel called to do. I said earlier, this is less of a speech and more of a conversation between two moms who are former school leaders and have chosen to adopt self-directed learning for their own children. We just finished up our intros. And before we get started into the very first question, Leslie, and I'll give you the first question just so you can ponder it. Our first question is going to be, how did you arrive at unschooling, which we already talked a little bit about. So then maybe the second part, where are you on your unschooling journey with your little one? And so that's the question we're going to dive into. But before we do that, I have a quick quote that I found around homeschooling, and I thought it was really, really interesting to think about in terms of education and its relation to unschooling. So a true bubble is when something is overvalued and intensely believed. And education may be the only thing people still believe in the United States. And to question education is really dangerous. It is the absolute taboo. It's like telling the world that there's no Santa Claus. And it's so interesting because when I talk about unschooling and what it is, and especially, the components of self-directed learning, I get looked at like I am crazy. Is that your experience, Leslie? Ever?
It is. And I find myself sometimes even saying, I know it sounds weird, right? And I've got to not do that because I know it's not weird, but then I almost feel like I want to feel sorry for someone because they're like, that's weird. And I'm like, I know, but it works.
It works, exactly. It literally is like telling like people that there's no Santa Claus, or the sky isn't, the sky is purple, it's not blue, or you can live without water and sunlight. It's people look at me, they look at us like, what is going on? How does this even work?
Yeah,
But what I'm really excited for us to talk about with this first question is to talk a little bit about the journey that where we're at in the journey, because I think that gives a clearer picture as to how it works and why it works. So where are you on your journey with unschooling with Sammy, your little one? And tell us again how old he is.
yeah. So Sammy is 6, and I just wanted to piggyback on what you just said. A few weeks ago, I was trying to plan a play date for Sammy with one of his friends. He's got two friends and their mom, and we were talking about dates and times. And I believe I said, Sammy has a class at 6 o'clock p.m. on this night, so maybe this other day would work. And she's like, he takes classes that late? How does he handle that? And I had to stop and kind of chuckle a little, like, and like handle that. But it was coming from a place of curiosity and not judgment. But it's almost like, what do you mean he has no bedtime? And what do you mean he's six years old? And what do you mean he gets up on his own? So that's exactly where we are on our unschooling journey. There are times that I feel confident. Most of the time, I would say the majority of the time, I feel very confident. And then there are times when I do feel uncertain. And I think that's when that deschooling bug, that inner chatter, that can sometimes be my own inner chatter that's negative, like, are you sure you're doing the right thing for him? Or it could be the inner chatter of voices coming from others, like it could be family, it could be friends, it could be strangers. Like, what are you doing? Um, but I tell you, Demetria, I always have to remind myself of my why.
Yeah.
Like, why am I doing this? And when I feel that if I do that on a consistent basis, if I can do that every day, if I can look at him and be like, this is why I do it. This is why. Because he's learning how to read on his own naturally, because he gets as much time to play all day long, because he has choice and voice, and he's competent and compassionate and confident, right? Um, and so is he happy? I also would end by saying I have my accountability partner, my sister Elsa, who's there for me if I ever have self-doubt. But that's where we are 2 years in, loving it. It works for our family. It feels like it's a really good fit. And knowing where I came from traditional school and progressive school that I still do love, but also, it's interesting, Demetria, not too long ago, I had a conversation with someone. I used to always talk about how in traditional schools, children are put into boxes, right? You know, they have to read by a certain age, write, mathematics. And for a while, I was saying, oh, but in progressive schools. And then suddenly I realized in progressive schools, the box is just a little bigger,
Just bigger.
just a
Yes.
little bigger,
That
but
is
there's still a box. So that's where we are.
that is absolutely right. And again, our journey is so similar because the same thing. I came from a very like traditional charter, no excuses, get to college, space into a very progressive independent charter school model, and then to a very progressive independent private school model, and now into self-directed learning. And
Wow.
and it's a wild ride. And you're absolutely right. It's just one small box, then you get a bigger box, and then you get to where we're at now, and there are no boxes,
No
there are no
boxes.
boundaries, there are no lines.
Wow. Yeah,
And then
I've
you
got
think,
goosebumps thinking about, I'm like, wow, yeah.
yeah, and it makes you think back to like, okay, why did we have all of these boundaries, in all of these other outlets and sectors? But yeah, I mean, I think for me and my son Justice, where we're at in our unschooling journey right now, um, I would say I'm similar to you in the sense that I start off really, really confident, and then I get into these pockets of time where I'm like, oh my goodness, what's happening? I didn't do all the things right, and I'm starting to feel. I think particularly having been in that system for a long time, you get to this point of a school year, right?
All right.
Uh, which
Yeah.
is a whole concept in itself, right? And you're doing reflection on, okay, well, how much did they learn? What else could they be learning? And you're doing all of those benchmark type of thinking.
Right.
And so I've caught myself in the past couple of weeks being in that space.
Yeah.
And that's the space where then I may be a little bit uncertain or less confident.
Mhm.
Um, but then what I try to do is I try to go back to, okay, the components of self-directed learning are that a child gets to plan, they get to do the work, the learning, and they get to evaluate their learning
Yeah.
on their own,
Yes.
right? They
Yes.
can, elicit help and facilitators, with family and experts and things like that if they want, but it's really about them planning, them doing, and
Yes.
them reviewing and evaluating. So
Yeah.
me reviewing and evaluating his progress, yeah, I can do it on one level as a mom because that's what parents do. Let's just be real. We're never going to stop like caring and wondering about their growth and development, right? But it's not, it's not my learning.
Right.
I
Right.
don't own him. I don't
Mhm.
own his brain. I don't own his interest. I don't own his skills. All of it is about him. And
Mhm.
so if I can have a conversation with him and he can feel good
Yeah.
about how he spent his time, if he feels confident about the things that he's learning, if he is not worried about the things that he doesn't already know, because he knows that he is acquiring other sets of skills that he is prioritizing that are important to him, then that's really what I should be focused on and I should be worried about at this particular point.
Absolutely.
And again, when we've had this conversation before, when it comes to doing unschooling and self-directed learning, they're building these bigger competencies around critical thinking and around learning how to learn. So why am I worried about that one math standard that I happen to know because I'm an educator?
Right, right.
If I was a parent, I wouldn't even know what that standard
No,
was,
not at all.
right? So why
No.
am I worried that he can't do that thing right now?
Right, right. Yeah,
He's going to get
yeah.
it when he needs to get it because he's learning the bigger skills that will help him to seek out the information to learn that thing.
And also to add to that, he's going to get it when he needs to get it, and he's going to get it in a completely different way, where I think he's going to absorb it and appreciate it and love it and like it and put it down and pick it up and twist it and turn it and do whatever he wants to do with it because it's his own. It's not in a school setting where we're saying this is the standard, this is the benchmark, this turn to workbook page number whatever, this is what you're doing, here are your manipulatives. If that, get started, you'll be graded on this tomorrow, no talking.
Yeah.
It's none of that anymore. It's complete freedom, complete autonomy in what he wants to do. So it's exciting knowing that, yeah, they'll get that. And I think they're going to remember it more and value it more in the end.
Exactly. And it's going to be used in a practical way,
Yes, yes,
you know,
yes.
because they're
Very
acquiring
practical.
the skills to actually do something, right? To
Yeah,
build something, to make something, to create something, to imagine something. They're not getting the skills to do the worksheet or to complete
right,
the test or to be able to do
right.
their homework independently when they get home, right? Like all of that is off the table. It's really learning for the sake of actually self-actualizing and producing something for the world, right?
Exactly. And if they also have any questions, they can do the research right then and there. It's not something that you're going to put off until tomorrow. Or, well, a teacher could say, we don't have time for that right now. A teacher could shut them down.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, you have voice, you have curiosity. Let's find out the answer to that. Do you need my help? Okay, no.
Then that's awesome.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about, and you started with this, let's talk a little bit about the role of play,
Oh,
what role play has in unschooling, what it
oh,
can look like, and then maybe if we could offer up a couple of examples. It's interesting for me. I'll start because one of the things that I find really exciting about unschooling um, is the idea that like play doesn't really have limits in unschooling. Um, well, it doesn't have limits, period. When you're in a school and you're playing on the playground or you're exploring, in a dramatic play area or whatnot,
mhm,
there tend to be rules, right, around how kids can engage in their play.
mhm,
Play can't be too big. It can't be too risky. It can't be too aggressive, right? It
mhm,
can't be all of these things that I knew were part of understanding people, right? Having the space to be able to interact. For example, the ability to wrestle, the ability to be rough and tumble, right? The ability to climb things, the ability to
mhm,
go high, right? On a jungle gym, or a structure outside, the ability to go under things, to crawl under things, to hide. These are all things that when we're talking about how school traditionally goes, um, there are a lot of rules around what can be done at recess, what other kids can do with other kids, and what they can't do with other kids, right?
mhm,
And there's something about it that is not natural for how we interact and how we engage. Particularly, we're talking about little ones. at the younger ages. And we both have boys, and I'm not trying to generalize anything, but like I could see when my son was younger, he liked to be able to run. He liked to be able to jump. He liked to be able to climb. And I see a lot of homeschoolers, and I see a lot of people who are more on the self-directed or unschooling approach who have children who can regulate their bodies in a way that had they been in school in a traditional schooling setting, they wouldn't have the self-awareness and regulation of their body and confidence and control of their body as other kids, as in comparison to other kids, if that makes sense. So for example, I have a friend whose boys are around Sammy's age, actually. They're a little
Mhm.
bit more than my son, and they are not afraid. They will climb on things, they will hang from things, they will twist and turn and do all kinds of acrobatic things. And they would not have built that skill to be able to judge whether they can make it. Oh, can I make it this far?
Right.
Right? That's a wide jump, you know?
Yeah.
Can I go that high? Am I scared enough? Am I scared? Or can I actually push through this fear and go one level higher on this tree?
Right.
Right? These
Mhm.
are things you can't do in school. And I know your boys, Sammy has just started forest school, so I don't know how much of that type of stuff that they've done yet. But big body play, risky play is something that I'm super excited about when it comes to unschooling. What's been your experience?
Yeah, so and it's interesting because I'm going to be giving Allison, I'm going to be calling you soon or clubhousing, back channeling, messaging you. I have a few questions for Allison when it comes to forest school. So there's Allison. Hi. So yeah, Allison and a few others told me about forest school. So Sammy did something last week, his first day in forest school, that I have been wanting him to do for a very long time. And it's going to sound kind of crazy, but you know, we've been inside for 2 years now with COVID. And to your point, this doesn't happen a lot in schools. And I wanted him to climb a tree and I wanted him to make mud pies. And he did just that. And he had so much fun. So he'll be going every week for 3 hours once a week and having the time of his life in farm and forest school. And adding to that, play is so crucial. When Sammy is home, for example, if he's not in forest school, we're not outside, we believe in uninterrupted play, free play. It's so important. So there are times that he spends the entire day playing, the entire day exploring, investigating, problem solving, critical thinking, exploration, role playing, pretend play, right? Uh, there are so many times that we'll have guided play where maybe we'll do some game schooling, and that's a lot where the I guess the some called skills, right? Somewhat skills will come into play, but play is definitely part of our home life as unschoolers, inside the house, outside the house. There's a lot of research that supports play and education for children. And I want him to learn in ways that are fun, exciting, engaging, hands-on, critical thinking, um, just no limits with time and space and the resources. And so that's what we're doing with unschooling. Play is huge. Yeah, it's everything.
That's awesome. Allison, feel free to jump in if you want, but there's no pressure to do that if you're busy right now. So one interesting thing that's connected to big body play in particular, and you
Mhm.
can summarize it in the sense that like big body play is about children being able to, so number one, touch each other, which, is sometimes a rule in traditional school that you can't even touch each other, right?
Right.
And so, number one, kids can touch each other. Number two, if everyone is in agreement that what is happening is okay, like if we are wrestling and everybody involved is okay with it, then it's allowed. If
Mhm.
kids are taught and shown how to say no, like if something happens that they don't want in that particular play scenario, let's say someone is getting too rough, they're able to say, no or stop, or, I want to be able to walk away from this situation, which is a life skill to be able to have, right?
Oh yeah,
And these
definitely.
things, I didn't start to come into an understanding of this until I was in progressive education environments. And then when I apply it though to unschooling, I feel like it's even more important um, to be able to like execute on that in a way that gives them the freedom to really be able to like learn about their bodies. And so whether that's big body play in the sense that like we're going to race each other to the top of to the tree, top of the tree, or we're going to roll around and wrestle in the mud, or we're going to um, do any of these sort of things that really involve the body and involve us adults not putting ourselves in the situation where we're going to say, stop doing that, be careful, no. That to me is like the essence of big body play, and kids being able to do that is part of what unschooling is, which is why I'm connecting with
Yeah, yeah,
really, really
that's
strong.
good.
Yeah. And we don't talk about, and I'm sorry
Yeah,
for bringing this up because we don't talk about that type of play very
yeah.
often in unschooling and realms. And we don't really talk about it that often in homeschooling either, in that sort of category of education. Um, and I don't know if it's a product of us as parents and adults still wanting to have control over the perceived safety.
I think it's also because we've been conditioned for so long. I'm going to do a room soon on the power of words, but you just made me think about it. There's also the power of words as unschoolers, because I have to catch myself at times. So, for example, when we were outside at the forest school last week, he's climbing so many trees. He's having so much fun. He's playing in mud, planting sunflowers, on the ground, rolling around, going up and down the mulches and the hills and whatnot. And there were times when he was climbing a tree that I heard myself a few times saying, "Be careful," like, "Be careful," and I had to stop, like, but I think what's really good is in progress is that as soon as I said it, I knew I said it, and it was like, okay, Leslie, try to say it less, and eventually don't say it at all. So being cognizant of that is good for me, because even though he may have heard it, I don't think it really changed a lot with what he did, but
Yeah.
still, I don't ever want it to.
Yeah, and in complete transparency, I am horrible at this.
Yeah, good. Well, so much better.
And that's why I want to talk about it more
Really?
often. I mean, it because it's just not natural for me to want to do risky behaviors
Mm,
when it comes to my body and my sort of space, my personal space. Like,
yeah, yeah,
but I'm also an adult, right? And so I've had
yeah,
all of these years of experience, and to your point, social conditioning around what I am and am not supposed to do, right? Whether
yeah,
it's because of my, cultural background, or because of my gender, or because of where I grew up, there are all of these social constructs around like what I should or should not do. And, getting back to the point of like uh, releasing the control, I need to continue to work on that. We have a pool, and as awesome as that is,
We have a pool too.
yeah, it's one of those things where yes, there are water safety things that it's would be responsible as a parent to teach, right? But at the same time, how do you allow for how do I allow, I'm going to center myself, how do I allow for my son to take some risks? Because I'm frequently saying, okay, be careful at the edge, right? Like, oh, don't forget it gets slippery over there by the stone. Like, and it's one of those things where like I know I'm not inserting the practices of self-directed learning and unschooling, and even just natural consequences at on a basic level in this moment, and I'm really restricting his ability to explore himself when I do those things. So it's not a bad or a wrong or anything. It's just to your point, Leslie, an awareness, um and something that I'm going to keep working on.
Well, and I'm like a worst case scenario person. Like if I'm looking at it, all I can picture is the worst case scenario happening. And I'm I don't know if y'all do the Enneagram, but I'm an Enneagram 6, and we're a fear-based personality. So anytime, sometimes I just have to, like what Tyra would do, I would just walk away. Like I can't even watch it. Like if they're climbing some things, like I just can't even look because I just automatically think they're gonna fall down, break their neck, like the worst case. Like you always hear of these like accidents, and so like that's in my mind. Like
Yeah.
the problem is like with social media and all that, you get all that information all the time, so you think these things are happening more frequently. Not really. They've always happened. We just never really heard about them. But now we hear more about these freak accidents, and it's scary. Like even the other day, because we live on a hobby farm, my husband right now, who's driving the tractor, you know, my son walked right behind him, and we had to have a safety talk about that. Like he cannot see you, and if he runs you over, it's not going to be pretty. Like this will not be pretty. So like there are some things that you have to be super
Right.
strict on, like when it comes to pure safety. Like you just can't. Like that stuff. And to me, pools are the same way. Like that is a strict safety. Too many kids die by drowning, even when parents are around. Like more kids die of drowning when there's a whole group of people nobody's paying attention to them. Like to me, water safety, you know, equipment safety, that's a big one for me. But like when it comes to like climbing and things like that, I mean, my son here who's climbing around, he jumped off a log the other day. They were just jumping off a log and he landed right on his knees. Didn't hurt him. We all cringed. But for him, he just, okay, moved on. I'm like, he's going to have the strongest knees and legs, but like, to us, like that's like, oh my gosh. But yeah,
Yeah.
you have to take those risks.
Yeah. And I think
And it's hard because parents just aren't used to it.
Yep, we definitely are not used to it, especially here in the States. And I think to your point, I think it's just about an awareness of trying to figure out what is the balance. So you teach the water safety, right? You teach the machine safety, right? And then I feel like there's this point where I'm trying to grow in where there's a conversation about, okay, well, what do you want to try? And taking into consideration what we know about staying safe or being safe, what would be a reasonable level of risk, right?
Yeah.
Because I mean,
Well, yeah.
there are people who would say going out into the middle of the ocean where there are sharks, right? Is not like,
I swam with sharks, so sharks don't scare me at
yeah,
all.
right. And there are other people who do it and they're like, you can do this and
Yeah.
you can do it in a safe way, right?
Yeah.
And so how
Well,
can
I think that's just modeling it all, right? Like
exactly.
you know, if we go out somewhere, we, especially if we know the area is kind of unsafe. So we're hikers and we go on hikes and do all that stuff. You know, I might have a talk at the beginning. Hey, we're going to go somewhere where it may not be so stable. Let's say we're going to a waterfall. You know, there are cliffs, there are edge. So what are we going to do? And we just kind of have a little safety talk. Are we going to walk towards the mountain or towards the edge? So like, you know, I think allowing them space to have that freedom, but also putting the balance with that risk at the same time. Just again, with every unschooling thing, having that conversation, having the talk about it. Like, I don't mind that you jump off of a rock, but let's not like walk on the very edge where there's a 50-foot cliff. Like, I think that's like kind of a balance. Like, I think my friend put it like risk versus reward. Like as we get older, our risk is much lower because the reward to us isn't that great anymore. But for kids, like the reward of jumping off, like let's say the monkey bars. Like I remember as a kid, you know, climbing across the tunnel on top instead of inside. Like, ooh, that was such a risk, and that was so cool. Like we reached that pinnacle of that age where we could climb on top. Like that was exciting. But like that risk is okay. Like to me, like that risk is fine now. You fall off, you break your arm.
And
You
that's
know,
and that's what risky play is all about. Like it's about not having play have to look like a certain thing, but it's still being a reasonable level of safe while having that challenge. Because you remember that feeling. We all remember that feeling when we did something that at first we thought we couldn't do, or that at first we were scared
yeah.
in terms of our body physically, right? And and when you do that thing, so for me, that was doing a triathlon. I did the New York City Triathlon. I
Oh,
did that triathlon, and you can't tell me there's nothing I can't do now.
I love it. I love
That's
it.
funny.
And I'm
I did
sure there are plenty of
triathlon
things I
too.
can't. There are plenty of things I can't do, right? But I never once thought that I would ever be able to swim a mile in the Hudson.
Oh,
I never thought that I'd be able to bike that long or run that long, right? Like
wow,
I
that's great.
literally thought I would die in the water. And
Glad
I
you
didn't.
did.
I didn't. But I
Yeah.
could have, but I learned
Yeah.
how to do it safely. I took the risk having
Mhm.
learned how to do it safely,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I didn't let the risk stop me. And I think every kid deserves to be able to have that moment, right? To your point, Allison, every kid deserves to have that.
Oh yeah. Well, and I think it comes with baby steps. You start as babies, letting them climb on chairs, and toddlers, learning that balance. Then next comes to the trees. I know, I forget who talks about it, but like, you know, some kid who's used to climbing trees will climb 50 feet up, but somebody who's never really been climbing trees, they may only climb to the first couple of rungs or whatever. And so, but they can see where they can achieve. And I think that's even as adults, we do stuff that's risky, some versus more, but it's just, again, that level of comfortable. We work up to it. Like you probably trained for the triathlon. I did triathlons too. You train for that to an extent. But even when I jumped in the water, we did it in a bay too. And when I jumped in the water, I didn't expect to like inhale a bunch of salt water and then like choke halfway through. So like you can only expect what you can train yourself for, I guess, in that sense, and then go for it. Like you have to, again, take that risk. And I think allowing children the freedom to do that helps gauge their own bodies. And that's isn't that what we're all going for? We want them to have the autonomy over their body and be
Exactly.
able to gauge that risk, and whatever that risk is. It could be going in for a certain job interview, taking that risk of something maybe they've never tried before. I'm always asking my kids, what's something new you want to try? Is there some activity that you've never done before? My daughter, the other day, we were just at the zoo, and I never would have thought. She's like, I want to go do the ropes course. I want to go do the treetop thing. And I said, all right, sure, let's go do it. Like, let's give it a go. And I thought I was going to have to coach her through it all. Nope, she zoomed right through. She was coaching me. And I was like, okay, well, we got this. Like, I'm okay doing it. Like, I'm not super scared, but there were moments I was like, ooh, but like she was fully confident in it. But give it a year ago and she never would have done that. Like, it's
Exactly.
so
Exactly.
giving them the autonomy and freedom to continue to move at their level. I think it's, again, one of those things, moving at their pace and not pushing them to do things that are uncomfortable to them.
Yeah, and I think that reminds me of the John Holt had, talks a lot about trusting children, right? And trusting that they are going to be able to do um, the things that they are developmentally at that time ready to do, right? And if
Mhm.
they have an interest or desire to do something
Yeah.
slightly outside of that zone, that they are going to be able to gather the information, to ask for help, to be able to steadily work towards whatever that goal is. And so again, I wanted to bring up play specifically because a lot of times we talk about play just in terms of the exploratory aspect of it, but we don't necessarily talk about when you give room to explore, there is that risk that comes along with it, and how are we um, making space for that risk to be involved as well. So I really appreciate this conversation, especially as I.
Well, and that's the hardest thing with learning for me, because I'm only 2 years into homeschooling and maybe a year into fully unschooling. But like that, trust your children. Like, you what? We trust them to do what? Like, yeah. So that whole concept of trusting your children was something I had to come to terms with, because again, it comes back to we were never trusted as children to make our own choices, to make our
Exactly.
own thoughts. And so that's for me been the hardest thing. And along with play, like play is learning. Like I thought, play is just something we do after learning. Like you can go and have freedom to play afterwards. That's fine. But let's learn first. And now being a full year into truly unschooling, like I see the benefits of their play. And that's, to me, I always try to tell parents, like, give it a year, give it a year, and I promise you'll see it once. And when you do, you can't unsee it. Like at this point, like when you start unschooling and you see that the way that they're learning and you're giving them that freedom, you can't unsee it. And it's like the most beautiful thing. I always tell it's so beautiful to see the curiosity, the spark, and their interest just continue to grow and how they learn. And yeah, you can't unsee it. You can't go back. Like
You really
I'm like, I
can't.
can't unsee what I know now. So
You really can't. And it's the mindset shift that helps you to
Yeah.
keep that lens on, right? It's the mindset shift around everything is learning.
Yeah.
You can't compartmentalize learning.
Yeah.
When your kid is trying to, gauge whether they're going to get to the very top of the tree, when they're reading a book, when they're helping you out, with a recipe, when they're talking to the postal carrier, when they, arrive to the house, all of that. Life
Oh,
is learning.
yeah.
And we haven't always had school in this traditional way. There was a reason we established traditional compulsory education,
Absolutely.
and we were learning before that.
Yeah.
Um, and we were learning for a very long period of time before we ever had systematic compulsory education.
Yeah.
And so, that kind of it goes back to what we were talking about in the very beginning. I'm not sure if you were on at that point, Allison, but when we talk about education and how like it's really just something that we've constructed, like people can look at us like we're Santa Claus, like we said, like we've told them that Santa Claus doesn't exist, right? Which is a whole we
yeah.
don't really do Santa Claus in my house, but anyways.
Let me
But
not
you
speak.
understand what I'm trying to say, right?
Mhm.
But yeah, like we don't
Oh,
have to do education like this. We can do it in a way that is authentic and natural to how we live life and to
mhm.
how humans develop. And that's what excites me the most about unschooling. Leslie, I think I'm going to skip over a couple of different parts, but I definitely wanted to get to um, the role of observation uh,
Sure.
in unschooling. And I think the reason I'm interested in observation when it comes to
Mhm.
unschooling is because, Allison, I don't know if you hear this a lot. I'm being sarcastic, but how do you know they're learning, right? How do you know they're learning? And I think we don't value enough how observation is our data.
Oh yeah.
And we don't need tests necessarily. Um, and I say necessarily because I do believe that if you are doing a certain approach to education, you need tests for that approach. When you're doing this approach, you don't need tests for this approach. I'm all about matching the strategy to whatever your educational approach is. With unschooling and what, in my opinion, with the most homeschooling experiences, you don't need to have tests to prove that your kid is learning. But you do need to have a good set of ears, a good set of eyes. You do need to have, uh, a mouth that's able to communicate, two-way communication. And so using our senses to really be able to observe um, their behavior, their thinking, their relationships, their interests. And so I'd love to open it up to either one of you around any experiences you've had when it comes to using observation to handle some of those concerns that might come up.
I'll start. I always say that, so you all know that I'm an educator. One of my one of my favorite classes at Bank Street was the observation and recording of children, of young children. And oh my God, I love that school. I love Bank Street. I remember having an assignment where I had to go into a 7/8 classroom, 7 to 8 year olds, multi-age classroom, and I had to observe a young student for hours on end. I could not say anything. I just had to observe her, and I'm pretty sure I took notes. And so much learning came out of that. And that experience and the experience of being a progressive educator, where we have been trained to observe a lot, in my case, I think it helps me to really understand and appreciate all the learning that comes out of when Sammy is being Sammy. So, for example, when I observe him, I'm observing to see that number one, is he happy? Like that's number one. Is my child happy? Because I want him to be
Mhm.
happy. I want him to be joyful. I want him to be doing something that's hands-on and exciting. And I want to learn from him. I want to learn what type of learner is he? What kind of play personality or personalities does he possess? And that helps to inform me what I can then do to enhance his learning. So if he's big into Legos, okay, well, there's a Lego robotic club. Maybe he'd be interested in that. So what am I doing now? I'm making a phone call to see if that's something he may want to do. Going to the library every Wednesday for Lego club. If it's farm and forest school, right? Knowing that he loves the outdoors, he wants to spend more time outdoors. I now want to inform my actions by finding the nearest farm and forest school. So I do a lot of observation. I journal. I also know this is so important with observing. I know when to go in and out. It's like a dance. So the majority of our day is I'm not even near him. I'm like in another room. I can see what's happening. I'm in ear call so he can talk to me. I can find out if he wants anything, he'll let me know. I'm asking open-ended questions when I feel it's the appropriate time, but I'm not hovering over him. I'm not. And if it's a game that we're playing, we can make up the rules. I want his decision. Do you want to play Too Many Monkeys? Do you want to play Shoots and Ladders? Do you want to play some swamp? What are you gonna do? What do you want to do?
Yeah.
And then I'll say one more thing when it comes to and I took this out. When it comes to you know what? I'll stop. That's for something later. Don't worry about it. So I'm done. Thanks.
No, I love that. I love that,
That's
Leslie. And
later.
I'm also a huge believer in observing both in and outside of the action. And when I think about what that looks like in homeschooling, that looks like when they are choosing to do their own thing and to be on their
Yes.
own for the day and to play on their own and to then you're just observing that and what's happening in that moment. You know, is there an emotion that is being communicated in that? Is there a deep dive, like zoning in tunnel vision on a particular interest? And that's why that's happening, right? And then in the moments when they're inviting us into the action, okay, well, what's happening in this that prompted them to invite me into the action? Or, you know, what's the emotion that's happening in this scenario? And then to your point, you know, prompting with questions in a way that's authentic again, because I mean, that to me is really the key between the old school system
Yeah.
and way
Yeah.
of thinking and unschooling. Like we
Yeah.
might learn the different types of questioning that we can use to push our kids, but
Mhm.
it's not we're now sitting beside them and asking these specific questions.
Right.
Like, no, you're doing that to better yourself as a human being so you can ask better questions to your
Yeah.
kids and to anyone else that you're having a conversation with. And then in the moments in which it feels appropriate and it feels right and it feels natural, then it's coming from you authentically, as opposed to the purpose being to school them or to evaluate them.
Right.
Because kids are great BS detectors. They can detect
Mhm.
when you are trying to teach them or school
Yeah.
them or correct them or like, and they don't want that.
But can I just say one thing that I know I know Allison has something. So Sammy's been playing with the hundreds chart lately,
Okay.
right? And he's been doing it for a few weeks, and we play different games with it. And so he's filling in the hundreds chart one day, and I'm observing him, and we're sitting at the dining room table, so I'm just a few, 2 or 3 feet away from him, and I'm thinking in my head, there's a strategy that he could be using that would make it a lot easier, right? To fill in the 20s or whatever. So I say to him, Sammy, can I make a recommendation? And this little 6-year-old who's like standing in the chair looking down, he's like, how about you do it your way and I do it my way?
Oh my goodness.
Right.
And in that minute, I just, it was like another win because not only
Yes.
was he doing it his way, but he had the voice and
Yep.
the empowerment to say to his mother, I want to do it my way, you do it your way, because a lot of parents who homeschool, even in schools, that would be disrespect. Like, how dare you say it? You do it my way. I'm the teacher. I'm going to teach you. You need to learn from me. But in that space, it's like, yeah, why am I putting my teaching strategies onto him? So I just thought that was the funniest thing.
His way is working for him right now.
Yes,
His way
yes,
is working for him. And yes, your way might be quote unquote more efficient or
right.
faster or whatever. More, what is the term that we use? More conceptually sophisticated is what we say sometimes in education and
Right.
around math, like a more sophisticated strategy. And who
Uh-huh.
are we to say what is sophisticated?
Yes,
If it's
yes,
working for
yes.
him, it's working for him. And if at a point, if there's any point at which that skill he's going to need to use repeatedly, and he's going to be applying that for something he's trying to do, he will figure out
Mhm.
that more sophisticated strategy, right?
Absolutely.
And if he doesn't, he's still learning a whole nother skill
Yes,
around persistence and stamina around using a strategy that might be less efficient, right?
that's right. Yeah,
So I think that's also something we don't talk about a lot. If you're not building one thing, then you're probably building and strengthening something else, right? And so
right.
there is no like a deficit necessarily. We want to always like feel like there's this you got to learn everything
Yes.
situation.
Good
And it's
point. Good
like
point.
it's not necessary. It's not necessary.
Well, and you're taking away that, especially like with math, you're taking away that synapses for him to figure it out. Because especially,
Yeah.
I did a talk on math on Clubhouse, and I was reading all about it, and it's like kids need to learn that that pathway, and if they skip that step, you almost break that synapses. So even though your way is efficient, that wouldn't work for him because he didn't figure out how to do it the more efficient way. So reality is, it's like that fact of allowing them to make those connections is actually more key than giving him the information to make it go faster.
Faster.
And
Exactly.
that is
It's the
so
foundation.
hard
It's the
for
foundation.
people, because
Exactly.
even I see it sometimes. I'm like, oh, but you could be doing it this way and could be going a little bit faster. Because for us, and I have an engineer dad, and so he very much thinks that way all the time. Like, they were building something when we were at their house, and the kids were working it out and trying to figure out. It was like a marble thing with some Hot Wheels tracks. I'm
Okay.
like letting them try to do it, trying to figure out how they can.
Oh, thank you. What are you walking away from with this weekend? After yesterday, when we deconstructed, we deschooled, we decolonized our parenting, today we talked about what's possible in this world. What can you create from nothing? You can create anything. What are you walking away with? Who would like to share? Natalia?
Thank you. I was able to only, I wasn't able to attend as much today as I did yesterday, but I feel like I have come in the beginning, of yesterday, like really, feeling pretty down. And I feel like I have received so much affirmation of where I'm at and like what this process may be like. And I also feel really supported. I'm really excited to connect with people that I've met at the conference. And I want to thank Sue specifically for letting me to this conference. So I feel like sometimes we, like a step back or like when things begin to feel really hard and you want to give up and then like something like this comes along, now I feel like I can go deeper rather than away. So it's huge for me. I feel like. So, thank you.
Thank you, Natalia. So what I got is that you came showing up one way, right? And you shared that with us yesterday when it was like, I don't know if I can still do this. I think I want to give up. And then right now you are left in the presence of being supported and affirmed that this is something that you can do. And I hear that you now have, your community has even expanded even further to include others who can support you on that journey. So foster those relationships. Follow those of us who reached out to you. Email us, text, call, hit us up on social media. We really mean it. We're not just talking lip service. No, we really mean it. We are here to serve you. So thank you, Natalia. Anyone else? What did you receive from this weekend? What will you now do differently starting tomorrow?
Here, I'll go.
Thank
I
you.
think for me, it was more reassurance than anything that we were on the right path. Um, Especially in talking deschooling yesterday and hearing, I think it was Robin saying that it took her she's 9 years in and she's still deschooling. And so we definitely feel the same way with our process, and uh, deschooling comes with continual growth. So I mean, that's I think for us it was just more a matter of giving grace and to the process, and being patient with ourselves.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you, Ian. You, by the way, you know you're my new good guy friend, right? I have good girlfriends. You're my new good guy friend, right? Okay. If you didn't know that, that's what happened over this weekend. Okay. And
Fair
so
enough.
so what I got is that you and your family are walking away from this weekend with reassurance that, yep, we're on the right path, and yep, this deschooling thing takes the time that it takes, and this is what's right for us. Thank you, Ian. Karen, I see that you've raised your hand. Come on, Karen. What did you receive
Hi.
this weekend?
This
Hey.
this weekend has been amazing. It just continued to pour and refresh me. But I want to say the biggest takeaway that I had was just the need to build community for my children specifically. I think I've done a pretty good job of finding my tribe by participating in these types of discussions and joining Clubhouse and all the other forums. But what I kept hearing from other moms and what I hear from my sons are, but where are my friends? And so now I just have just a re-sparked desire, purpose, and mission to find their community so that while they're thriving at home, they're also thriving in a world of like-minded young people that are kind of growing up the way they are. So that's what has really, the fire has been lit. And I know it's not going to be easy, but I know it's doable.
So let me ask you, hold on, Karen, where are you located?
I am in Prince George's County, Maryland.
Let me tell you why. You
Yes,
said,
I know about your genius school in Baltimore and Atlanta and
okay,
other
well, wait a
cities
minute.
in the
Well, wait a minute.
motherland.
Wait a minute. First of all, you got two other PG, I'm sorry, let me say it right, the Prince George's
The
County.
Prince George's, yes.
There you go. So you're between Kim and Cody. They're over here shouting for you. But guess what, Karen?
Yes.
You too can have a five pillar genius community right there in Prince George's County. So that's actually something that we have other folks who are interested in the same thing.
All
So
right.
if this type of community is something that would benefit your children, then make sure that we talk and we can make that happen.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's time because if my baby tells me he wants to go to school one more time to make friends, and that's the only reason, so I know that I have to make a shift so that this is the wonderful opportunity I know it can be for them.
Okay. Well, make sure that you hit me up this week because
Yes, ma'am.
I'm taking some time off in May, and
Okay.
so make sure that we talk this week so that we can discuss what's necessary in order to make that happen. And guess what? That's for everyone that's here. Kim, I'll get to you in a second. Just so you all know, who I am is that children everywhere around the world are able to learn authentically, that they're able to be their authentic selves and learn in freedom, that parents are able to create liberated relationships with their children that allow for everyone is free to be and free to act. Mom and dad, kids are able to converse with each other and create the type of family life that everyone wants. And then freedom bleeds into your learning community so that you can do that wherever you are. Right now, we have genius directors. Some of them are here. We have them, let me start on the West Coast, in California, in Vegas. Let's see, let me come over. Colorado, let me go up. Canada, Alberta, Canada. Let me slide over here to the East Coast. What is that up there? We have a couple places in Pennsylvania, a couple places in Maryland, and here in Atlanta. Then let me go across the water, and we have some in Kampala, Uganda. So wherever you want a place to belong, as we heard today, you can have that. Okay, Kim, go ahead.
All right. Thank you so much. I everything that everybody else has said. And then also too, in preserving, what I take away is being willing to remember to check in, whether it's a daily check-in, a weekly, monthly, or even annually, and not be so fixed on what we're doing today has to continue to be this way just because we said it, we were going to do it, but to be willing to check in, be willing to adjust, and paramountly to be to hold relationship, to make relationship paramount, because as we shift and change and figure things out, as long as our relationships are kept intact through this process, that's all that really matters.
Check in, relationship is paramount. How we started doesn't have to be how we finish. Mm-hmm. It is up to us. That's the freedom that we're in right now in this world called self-directed learning. Thank you, Kim. Thank you so much. All right, I see Jasmine's hand is raised. And then, Jasmine, you might be the last one for right now because I want to give folks an opportunity to go back into the breakout rooms. We were blown away by Mary Ellen. Like, I was standing up and I had to lean against the wall because I was about to pass out. And so we need to go back into Mary Ellen's room. We got some unfinished business. Folks got some questions and some comments. So I promised them time to do that before 4 o'clock. So go ahead, Jasmine.
Yeah, I just wanted to share my action items, which the first one is I'm making a sign that has Maya Angelou's quote on it. Yes. Because the first time it was spoken in this conference, I was like, that's like what I came here for, I think. And then the second time was like, that needs to be put on a sign and hung in my house that we can all do it. My second action item, is to ask my kids what success looks like to them. That was like such a gem of an idea. And then also, this is going to be a smaller sign because it's more just for me. It's not as much for my kids. But yesterday, Yolanda said this phrase, have grace for yourself as you become someone you've never been before.
Wait.
And I just need to see that. I don't know. Maybe I'll put it on my bathroom mirror or something. I just need to have that every day. So there was so much more, but those are my top things.
Oh my gosh. Have grace. Wait a minute. Run that back. Say that again.
Have grace for yourself as you become someone you've never been before. Like, if that doesn't capture what I'm trying to do and what I want my kids to reach for, it's beautiful.
Listen, I'm not. There are no words. That's a mic drop situation right there, right? Have grace for yourself as you become someone you've never been before, and that, my friend, might need to be the largest sign that you put up because that's for everybody. A kid who is a kid, they've never been. If they're 10, they've never been 11. If they're 17, they've never been 18. If they're 3, they've never been 3.5. And so it's for all of us, having grace as we become someone that we've never. Girl, where Yolanda at? Let me call her. Tell her. Amazing. Thank you so much, Jasmine. And thank you for all of your support that you offer throughout this conference, especially reminding me to record. Mm-hmm. All right, Cody, I see you have your hand up. Go ahead.
There's definitely so much. So, and I wasn't even in that session, and I had to write that down. And that's what I have to share is that there was so much happening and different sessions that you all couldn't see. The two that I was able to moderate, Ian and Jay, were great. The fatherhood, unschooling, you all gotta go back to hear from the dad's perspective. I thought was key. And then those parents who are looking or kids looking to go to college, the unschooling and college, Ash dropped some great suggestions. Go see that. We're recording all of these. They will become available for you to view so you can see all the ones you weren't able to be a part of, but the information was superb. So don't miss out on those opportunities as well. So much, so much, so much. And I want to go back. I got to go back and watch some myself. So when they become available, definitely take the time. Thank you, Ian and Jay. That was a blessing to me as a dad of an adult kid. There are adult kids, you know. Thank you so much, and I appreciate your time.
Okay, stay right there. Don't go anywhere, Cody. Can you also spotlight Kim, please? If you can, Kim, if you can come on camera
Yeah,
for a
she has to
second,
come on camera first.
you can. Also want to thank all of our, there she is. That's right, girl. Get your head together. That's right. If you can spotlight Kim for me while you're doing that, let me thank all of the speakers from yesterday and today. And what all of you should know is that none of this would have happened if it were not for these two individuals right here. Who Cody is to me, the reason why I'm taking 2 weeks off in May is because he and I got to jump the broom. He and I got some business that we got to attend to. And if y'all don't know what jumping the broom means, that means we about fitting to get married. That's what that means. And so we have some things that we have to do. And then Kim is my good girlfriend. She's also my sorority sister. And without their support, none of this would have happened. As you know, we intentionally wanted to have this great big brouhaha on Gather Town, this really fun platform that you can see behind Cody. That didn't quite work out the way that we wanted it to. However, we sat and redefined success. And this, and all of you attending, and all of you speaking, and all of you sharing, this is the redefinition of success for us. So without you being in these little squares on Zoom, none of this would have happened. And to Kim and Cody, I am forever grateful to who you both are to me and for what you made possible for families around the world.
And bless you for your visions for even thinking to do this. That's the spark to even you said this is what we want to do, and we were like, okay, tell us what we need to do. But it was your driving force, and what you just said, and redefining success. It is successful because we say it is, and we reached who we still successfully reached those folks that we wanted to reach, and now have it available for others at a later date.
Absolutely. And so it will be available on Gather Town at a later date. On the website, it says May. However, I think I might need more time to get the videos, together lined up. So you all will receive an email when that is available and a personal invitation to come and join. To all of the directors that are in the audience, I see Demetria in there. Thank you so much. Let me see. I don't want to look. When you start name dropping, that's when, things go a little bit left. I don't want to miss anybody. But my daughter Sunday, thank you so much, Sunday, for being here and for sharing yourself and your story. Her story is my story. So if you want to know what it was really like, talk to Sunday. So on that note, it is now 3:46. We are going to be complete here. If you want to go back into a breakout room, and I promised Mary Ellen and her friends that we would have more time for conversation, you're welcome to do that. And at around 4:05 or so, we'll send an announcement saying that we'll
Hey, I don't know what happened. I don't know what happened, but I actually have to go because I have a girls, I can't hear you, Leslie. You're on mute, but I have a book club that I have to do at 1 o'clock my time. So I have to go. I don't know what happened. Let's leave. Let's leave and see what happens.
We're starting all over again.
Let's leave.
Actually, I have to ask Allison a few questions. Oh, is it
Yeah.
recording? Oh, it's recording, so maybe I shouldn't.
Well, yeah, that's why I'm like, so maybe it's because if I leave the room or I stop recording, I don't know, but let me hit stop.